in for all my comic creator people, especially those who want to write for Marvel DC one day, particularly if you want to write for DC Comics. Well, it has been announced that Netflix is attempting to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. And if you didn't know, Warner Brothers Discovery is the company that owns DC Comics. So, if they were to be successful in their acquisition, Netflix would essentially own DC Comics and be in complete control of what happens in the DCU, as well as the future of DC Comics. And so, just as Disney has control of Marvel Comics and all the films that go with it, on the DC side, Netflix would have control of that if all this were to go through, and if in the acquisition process they were able to acquire DC Comics, which would make sense for them, so that they can have control and license it back to themselves so that they can produce movies and shows. But most likely they also want the movies to get more into that part of Hollywood so they can actually own their own studios, in combination with everything else they got going on. But here's the thing I know about Netflix. Netflix is very different from Disney. Disney, the way I look at Disney in terms of how they handle Marvel Comics, is that they kind of let them do their own thing to a certain extent. I think they kind of give them directives like, hey, we got this movie coming out, so make sure you have people write this thing, have this thing come out because we have the movies coming out. Aside of that, I think for the most part, they don't do much with Marvel Comics into the inside and outside the comic book industry, because typically they don't give a damn about the comic book industry, and that's just what it is. They care about the licensing for other stuff, because that's where they make their money, not in comic books. Netflix is not that kind of animal. Netflix is a much younger company, and Netflix is a tech company. They are tech first. They're a tech company that happens to work in entertainment, right? And that's what they actually are. They look at things very differently. They will shut down stuff very quickly based on what the data says. So we might see lines get canceled, one issue in. You might see some people taking the long walk out of the comic book industry because they're like, nah, you ain't producing. And you might see that. Now, for those who are writers and artists, half this stuff matters and doesn't matter to you because none of you who write for DC or Marvel are actually employees. You are contractors. You have no benefits. You are 1099. So it really doesn't matter who buys them. It really matters as to who the editors are who hire you. Because if the editors who are there are seen as dead weight based on the number of quote-unquote failures they've had in the last few lines, they may not be there to recommend you for hiring. And that I've seen that happen at 2 other publishers recently, where some editors were let go, and therefore people were like, oh, I don't understand what a job fell through because the editor was let go. So knowing how Netflix thinks about things, they're very data-driven and they're a bit more hands-on. Maybe for the first 2 years, if this acquisition